have seen Killer Croc. You have seen Bane. You have seen Darth Vader. Oh, and he just fell over. That's great. You have seen Boba Fett, who also just fell over and dropped his gun. You have also seen Batman, who did not fall over. Yay! You've also seen Deathstroke, along with the Joker. And on July 7th, you will be seeing even more awesomeness. But how did we get there? Well, let me explain. A while back, I was inspired by a group of customizers, all focused on very specific figures. One of the main ones was Michael MGF. There was also the Minifig in there somewhere, Legomatic 9, all those bigger customizers. They were kind of the whole group that got me into doing this. I've been doing this since... how long have I actually been doing this? Yeah, I've been doing this for about 5 years. Half of a decade. But obviously, I didn't get as good as I am now just by sitting there. Because, well, to quote the Joker from the Gotham TV show, everybody has to start somewhere. So, where did I start? This, right here. That is where I started. If you don't know what this really is, well, this is actually air dry clay with washable paint. Definitely not the stuff that I use now. Definitely not the stuff that I use right now. What I'm using right now is green stuff and acrylic paints. So definitely not what I was using before. When I got into sculpting, the first thing that I was really into was Five Nights at Freddy's, because I mean, it was like, what? It's like 2015, 2014, somewhere around there. And that's when Five Nights at Freddy's was much bigger, because it was like, boom, it's right here, it's brand new, everybody likes it. And, yeah, I think this was an endoskeleton, if I remember correctly. I don't. This is really all that I have left from the air dry stuff, because I could just pick it off. Honestly, I'm surprised that this lasted 5 years. Yeah. But then, eventually, things went around, and I got some of my first green stuff, which I found out what to get when I was watching the Minifig, because he sculpted with green stuff. So it was like, oh, he's using green stuff, I guess I'm gonna use green stuff. So I got green stuff, and I have some of my first projects here. Yeah, actually, I have my first figure that I've ever made with green stuff. Right here, still intact. I made this, which is Withered Bonnie. It's not accurate at all. The sculpt is completely terrible, but you can still tell that it's Withered Bonnie. I mean, like, he has the little wire here, the arm, the open face. But this sculpt is so sloppy. Very interesting to see how far one person can come over after like 4 or 5 years. It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, I went from that right there to this. Like, mean, look at that difference. Look at that. So yeah, this is actually my first figure that I made with green stuff. You cannot remove the legs because green stuff. You can remove the head, I think, but the head itself is actually stuck in with green stuff. I did not really know what I was doing back then. I've always been a creator, and oh well, decapitated wither Bonnie. I guess that's a bit of a downgrade since he only lost his face before, but let's just get that back on there. There we go. So yeah, that's my first minifig that I ever made with green stuff. The next one that I found, at least, was this. I think this was a spring trap. You can clearly tell I still didn't know what I was doing. But I mean, this paint job isn't actually terrible, to be perfectly honest. It's the head. I don't know, man. Especially since the ear is supposed to cut off, like right here. I don't know, man. That was one thing that I was always good at, was painting and making everything look good. For example, here's a body of a Wolverine that I made way back in the day. And I mean, for this being like five or so years ago, this isn't actually terrible. I mean, that is kind of terrible. But everything else is kind of decent. I actually made one of my cleanest torsos in that. I can't find it as of right now because it's been a long time, but I made a Red Robin. If anybody knows who that is, it's Tim Drake. He grew up after being regular Robin, and he put on a new persona, which is Red Robin. Yum, am I right? So yeah, those over there. Then these are some unfinished projects. This was a toy Bonnie, I think. Yeah, it has to be because it has the little rosy cheeks. And a little tooth there. There's not really any eye holes, but that's fine. So yeah, I guess that was decent. And then this was supposed to be a toy Chica. My oh my, does that look terrible. You could totally tell that it's green stuff, but for some reason the plastic's like stuck right here. I clearly did not know what I was doing, and then this was probably a failed sculpt. Yeah, because you can't even put it on a neck bracket, so yeah. But yeah, very interesting that I can go from this to something like this. That's very ridiculous. Then again, it has been 5 years, so I mean... Any tips for customizers out there? Start small. Always start small. I rushed into it. I did not know what I was doing, and I made this. So, if anybody actually wants to customize, I would give them this as a tip. First off, do some research and know what you're supposed to be using. Like, I use green stuff as of right now. I'm probably going to switch over to Procreate, just because it's a lot easier to work with, at least that's what I've heard. It's kind of like green stuff, except it's less sticky, and, well, that's green stuff. That's green stuff. So I read the description. It's a lot less sticky, so I might switch over to that. Those are the two really big options for sculpting material. And then I would use acrylic paints. Acrylic paints are always the way to go. If I was to suggest a first few colors, I would recommend the primary and secondary colors. Red, blue, yellow, green, orange, and purple. I would suggest going with those. If you really had to choose a limited amount, I would suggest going with those, just because you can mix a lot of different things with that, and yeah, it'd be good. Maybe throw in like a white, a black, and a brown, maybe a tan. But besides that, you got a really solid starting kit, I guess. You might want to get an X-Acto knife. I don't know. Gotta be careful about that. When I first started using an X-Acto knife, that was 2018. That was 2 years ago. The first time I started using it was when I was carving the base that now is used for Bane, right here. As I said in the showcase, it was a Killer Croc Big Fig, so I had to cut off the little fins in the back, and I like kept on pricking myself. So I had like little itty bitty dots of like cuts and everything on my hands. So it takes some practice to get good with an X-Acto knife. It takes a lot of practice, but you'll get there. And then you don't need sculpting tools. A lot of people are like, oh, you should get sculpting tools. You don't really need sculpting tools. You just need something small, something big, something round. Like, sometimes I use the body of my X-Acto knife, sometimes I use my X-Acto knife, sometimes I use a push pin, sometimes I use a toothpick, sometimes I use the body of my paintbrushes. Like, it all just depends on what you want. So, that's it for the video. What do you think of the difference there? I think it's a bit ridiculous, but we'll look at that later. I have actually considered making another Withered Bonnie now, just so that I can have an actual difference between where it's the same figure made 5 years earlier, 5 years later. I thought that'd be a cool idea. If you want me to do that, please let me know in the comments section. That'd be greatly appreciated. And dropping a like on the video would be amazing. Hitting that subscribe button would make my day. And thank you for watching.